so obviously it's been a minute since the opening ceremony for the Olympics, and we had all the time in the world to think about our opinions of it. Everyone has stated their take so far. But in case you missed it, we're going to recap what happened. So first off, they assembled a bunch of costumed performers and drag queens to essentially make a parody of The Last Supper. We can't show any of the videos because NBC is instantly copyright striking and demonetizing anyone who shows it, which is interesting because it's kind of selective enforcement who gets copyright strikes when they talk about this. But we can show some still images at least. In the center, in the place of Jesus, is a performer under the name Barbara Butch. And she is wearing a halo around her head. She is morbidly obese, doing a very sinister heart symbol with her hands.
Yeah, when I saw that, I said, it's the demonic nature of the idea of inclusivity in 2024. It means something very different than it used to.
I didn't realize there was a kid in this.
Yes.
There are, children present for the performances. They had a bunch of dancing drag queens as well as children accompanied right next to them. One of them even had exposed genitals, I believe.
Yeah, I unfortunately saw that on Twitter.
Yeah.
I don't want that pulling up.
So I believe that one, I looked at that one. It looks like it was just a tear in his tights.
I have to agree.
We can only hope.
I mean,
like, I understand why people thought that, because when you screenshot it in 480p, it's going to look like that. But there were some higher quality
It's the
images.
one time I will agree with the Krasensteins.
So
when they shared it, and I was like, no, I think that part is right. The rest is obviously demonic. You don't need to add extra stuff to make it demonic.
I'm gonna get so much flack for this one. I think it's possible that it actually was not intended to be the Last Supper.
Interesting.
By whoever initially designed it.
Right.
That's actually what they
obviously
claim.
Right.
It was interpreted that way, not just by American Christians, which is the way the media tried to play it. The French media also reported that it was the Last Supper.
So a spokeswoman for the Paris 2024 ceremony said clearly there was never an intention to show disrespect to any religious group. If people have taken any offense, we are of course really sorry. And then Thomas Jolly, the artistic director of the ceremony, spoke out saying again that it was not intended as a parody. He said the idea was to do a big pagan party linked to the gods of Olympus. You'll never find in my work any desire to mock or denigrate anyone. I wanted a ceremony that brings people together, that reconciles, but also a ceremony that affirms our Republican values of liberty, equality, and fraternity. So he certainly denies that this was a parody of The Last Supper as well, but that is the way it was taken by a lot of people.
I think somebody in there.
Yeah,
somebody
for
involved in that.
And I think that later on, the performer Barbara Butch made a statement where she admitted that it was a parody of The Last Supper, but we'll get to that. The one part that I wanted to bring attention to was this pale horse. Really, it's a robotic horse that they showed during the opening ceremony. And people were frequently citing this Bible verse from Revelation, chapter 6, verse 8. And I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death, and hell followed with him, and power was given unto them over the fourth part of the earth, to kill with sword, and with hunger, and with death, and with the beasts of the earth. So you can see the image of the so-called pale horse that is actually a robotic horse here.
There's a 20 there.
Brewmaster Monk said, the point of Hollywood's symbolism is to spread paranoia and start a moral panic. Their real job is what happens in the tabloids. They influence the public through psyops. The more you idolize them, the more you are impacted. I generally agree with that.
Yes.
But I wanted to ask you, Aiden, what your interpretation of this? Is this actually intended as a reference to that verse in Revelation, or what is your...
This is wonderful for me, because medieval historian I study theology. That's a night. France was known as the military superpower of the Middle Ages, and they relied upon their heavy cavalry. This is just that is clearly a knight on horseback. This is paying homage to France's history as a medieval military superpower.
Interesting.
As for the horse thing, this is a classic case of people taking one verse out of context. And in fact, taking an entire chapter out of context, because the entirety of the book of Revelation, with a select few examples, is symbolic language. There is not a pale horse is not going to be a literal single one guy on a pale horse. This has led to people during the invasion by the Huns, the invasion by the Mongols, Americans on the Western Plains meeting the Comanche. You have had every single time there is a horsebound culture that has swept through an area. If there are Christians there, they've gone, oh my God, it's the apocalypse, it's the end times, which is understandable. It is understandable why you might see things that way.
20.
We got a 20 from Nate real quick. He said, I don't want to be mean, but if you think that wasn't intentional, that's some smooth brain-ish.
I think it wasn't intentional by the designer, the original designer.
Thomas Jolly, you mean? Okay. Well, I guess...
Just to quickly on this, I'm trying to be a quicker version of myself here.
Go ahead.
It's important to note that there are, first of all, 3 other horsemen. They are we first have the white horse, and its rider had a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he came out conquering it to conquer. Second one is red. Its rider is permitted to take peace from the earth so that people should slay one another, and he was given a great sword. The third seal is a black horse, and it is a pair of scales, and he says specific things. A quart of wheat for a denarius. Sorry, not necessarily him, but I heard what seemed to be a voice in the midst of the 4 living creatures saying, a quart of wheat for a denarius and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, and do not harm the oil and wine. Now, I'm not going to sit here and try and live interpret Revelation, because that's how you get people who think that the world is going to end in 3 years, every 2 years. But there's clearly more to it than just the pale horse. Also, the pale horse is the last horse. Where are the rest of the horses? And most importantly, this also ties back to Zechariah chapter 6. And that one reads, again, I lifted my eyes and saw, and behold, 4 chariots.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
My problem with all of this is that when I see that someone is an LGBTQ activist, I automatically tie that most of the time to a lot of anti-religious views because they take great issue with the Catholic Church.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm not willing to give them the benefit of the doubt if they say that it wasn't intentional.
That's the Last Supper thing. I could see either way. Right. The horse, however.
As for the Last Supper thing, Barbara Butch, the performer who was in the center of that part of the ceremony, posted a picture of it on her Instagram story, and she clarified that it was, at least in her mind, intentional. She said, I see people getting indignant about this. I would like to know if they were also indignant when Nintendo did it. And they posted a photo that was from Nintendo of Mario in the position of Jesus at the Last Supper. And then when Star Wars did it as well. So she posted other examples, basically saying that she believed it was an intentional parody of the Last Supper.
The problem is,
that's all bad.
The idea is that activists in her particular world do have an issue with the Catholic Church, whereas Nintendo, I mean, maybe they do, but I've never heard anything about Nintendo having a,
Also, Pokemon isn't like directly explicitly outlawed by the Bible the way that dressing in the clothes of the opposite gender is. Right. Nobody take this to be my personal opinions on anything. I'm just saying what the Bible says.
I got another 20 to read from Nate. He said, Aiden, I love your content, love Lore Lodge. That was 100% mocking the Last Supper. I have no idea about the horse thing.
Do you think it's possible that they...
At first, I was 100% there, too. I was like, this is mockery of the Last Supper.
When it comes to the horse, though, do you think it's possible that it's almost a double entendre with that as well, where they know it's a knight, but also we know they're gonna interpret this as a horse, as the pale horse? So
it could be. I could see that.
And that if they did 4 horses, it's too obvious because they're trying to like hide all these things.
Yeah,
but
I could. Yeah, again, I mean, I could. I guess the difference there is I'm willing to have different opinions between was this intended to be perceived in a certain way versus should this be perceived in a certain way in a theological context. Right. That is not the pale horse of Revelation in terms of the actual world we live in. This is not a herald of the end times. I don't even think this is necessarily trying to bring in the end times.
Even if all of this was intentional, that wouldn't necessarily mean
that's my main point here.
That it's of like eschatological importance for Christians.
That's
the main point I'm trying to make here.
Are there people that think that this is the actual symbol of the actual
symbol?
Some
people were saying that, yes.
Oh my goodness,
but according
that's ridiculous.
to Thomas Jolly, the artistic director of the ceremony, he said he presented an artistic staging designed to be inclusive and representative of France, declaring above all, I want this ceremony to include everyone. We must all celebrate this diversity.
Yeah,
so
everyone
it was
who
all
agrees with me.
it was all,
Is his idea.
for him at least, so he claims, a big celebration of France's diversity. But obviously Christians and a lot of non-Christians as well took it an entirely different way. And I saw that Bishop Barron even posted a response video to this entire situation, kind of telling Christians what his thoughts are.
This is Bishop Barron. Just a few days ago I was in Indianapolis for the marvelous celebration of the Eucharistic Congress, 50,000 Catholics coming together to worship the Lord and celebrate the real presence of Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament. So I come from that experience and I come home and, I love the Olympics, so I turn on the opening ceremonies of the Olympics. What do I see now? And it's in Paris, France, a city I love. I spent 3 years as a doctoral student there. What do I see but this gross mockery of the Last Supper? And I won't describe it any further. Just go online. It's gone viral. You can see it. But this France felt evidently, as it's trying to put its best cultural foot forward, the right thing to do is to mock this very central moment in Christianity where Jesus, at his Last Supper, gives his body and blood in anticipation of the cross. And so it's presented, though, as this gross, sort of flippant mockery. France, which used to be called the eldest daughter of the church, Paris, that gave us, Thomas Aquinas taught there, and Vincent de Paul was there, King Louis IX, St. Louis, France that sent Catholic missionaries all over the world. France, whose culture, and I mean the honoring of the individual and of human rights and of freedom, is grounded very much in Christianity, felt the right thing to do was to mock the Christian faith. A question I would pose, we all know the answer to it. Would they ever have dared mock Islam in a similar way? Would they ever have dreamed of mocking in this gross, public way, a scene from the Quran? As I say, we all know the answer to that. I think, folks, what's interesting here is this deeply secularist postmodern society knows who its enemy is. They're naming it, and we should believe them. They're telling us who they are. We should believe them. But furthermore, we Christians, we Catholics should not be sheepish. We should resist. We should make our voices heard.
Okay.
So yeah, that was, obviously, in my personal opinion, I think it was intentional, the way that it was designed. And I think that you shouldn't see this as a humiliating moment. I think it's humiliating for them. And I think it's sad for France also that if this was intentional, which again, I believe it is, they're openly forsaking a huge part of their cultural heritage, which is Catholicism.
It's the same city that told us Notre Dame was an accident. I think it's arson.
Yeah,
I have to agree with that one.
there's a lot of theories
Also,
about that.
I want to say
They had, 800 some churches burned that year?
it's a little weird. And there's a lot happening in this country. Like there was a giant church that just burnt down.
I also did not appreciate the disrespect that they showed to Marie Antoinette. I didn't like that.
Actually, I did
I'm
kind
totally
of
down with that one.
I
I
did
vibe
like
with
that
that.
part, Mary. That Gojira is an awesome
I don't
band.
think she deserves that.
Of
but
course you say that, Mary. The Marie Antoinette of pop culture crisis.
I'm actually just a monarchist. But now, after all of the backlash, Barbara Butch, the performer who was in the center
Is
of
that
that
George
scene,
Bush's mother?
Yes.
yeah, George Butch's mother.
George Bush's mother.
She is now filing a lawsuit against some of her critics. This says
It's the first time I've ever heard the term grossophobic.
this says
I
since
believe
the
that
opening
means fatphobic.
ceremony.
Yes, I know. I learned that now.
This says, since the opening ceremony, Barbara Butch has been a target of an extremely violent campaign of cyber harassment and defamation.
Here's that word
she
again.
has been threatened with death, torture, and R-word, and has also been the target of numerous anti-Semitic, homophobic, sexist, and grossophobic insults.
Everything.
All of that
I don't know what
together,
grossophobic
using
means.
the term violent there just makes me immediately just completely disregard it because it isn't violent. There have been there's no physicality here.
Maybe-
The root of the term gross is large.
It's
in
just a
German.
word for fat.
Well, that's what happens every time my gross pay goes
Interesting.
down, and every time I pay taxes.
This
It's
says
grossophobic.
Barbara Butch condemns this vile hatred directed at her, what she represents and what she stands for. Indeed, her commitments and personal values of benevolence, inclusivity, and love for others have always been at the heart of her artistic project, promoting festivities for all regardless of age, sexual orientation, origin, religion, or gender. She is today filing several complaints against these acts, whether committed by French nationals or foreigners, and intends to prosecute anyone who tries to intimidate her in the future. That is a statement from her
She
attorney.
said while castrating children.
I mean, good luck with that in American courts, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, we have literal laws against suing people. Not suing
just-
people, but
Yeah.
we have laws that say that you can say these things.
She makes me want to pentabarf. I'm going to try to say that word as much as
often
I
as
can
possible.
today. Thank you, Aiden.
The cry bullying is, I think, the worst part. Because, you lash out at these people, Christians, who you reliably know are not going to violently lash out back.
Right.
And then you cry as if you're the victim.
Yeah, that is the one thing is like the retaliation that I saw. There was definitely some like over the top things that were said, but
Yeah.
a lot of the retaliation I saw from the most people was just, hey, that wasn't cool.
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel a little slighted. This is the Olympics. It's supposed to be about unity. Why are we doing this?
Yep.
And like then you have a few people who obviously took it really far.
Yeah.
But the main reaction I saw was just kind of quiet, like, really,
Yeah.
guys?
I wasn't surprised.
Me neither.
Well,
I
are we-
haven't watched.
Yeah, like,
I boycott France.
Are we
I haven't watched the whole
surprised
thing.
by
I just-
any of this
no,
anymore? Like,
no.
this happens so
This is-
frequently
The ceremony
that...
was just a Lil Nas X video.
Right, like,
It's what's been going on for years.
I saw it and I was
No,
like,
Lil Nas X video
okay.
would have been entertaining at least.
Ooh, wow, hot take.
Yeah,
You haven't vibed to Old Town Road at least a little bit.
That was the beginning of them trying to take your kids away.
I think Lil Nas X gets. I feel like he just kind of stumbled into all of this. I feel bad
that's
for the
that's
guy.
a plant who was there to destroy the innocence of children. Because remember, he toured all the
He went
libraries
to all of
and
these
schools,
schools
and then he went
and-
so far like JoJo Siwa. He was pre JoJo Siwa.
Yeah, I guess.
And then that's
fair.
what happens. you
Unlike
know?
JoJo Siwa, he actually does have talent.
He
He
had
does
it.
have talent.
He had. I was willing to vibe with it until the lap dancing on Satan.
Well, again,
I was like,
when
that might be a
happened,
little too on the nose.
That was
buddy.
even unsurprising to me when he was doing that. The
Yeah.
Chappelle bit about him is the best. Is that we're all living in his dream? Because like, imagine this guy he's become Lil Nas X. Like your ass as a child. What do you want to be up? He goes, I want to be Lil Nas X. What's that? And here you go. On top of all that though, I'm not surprised. I do wish Christians would just start making better art.
Yeah.
And then just be like, just reject all this. Don't boycott it. Don't watch it. It's ridiculous. Don't tune in.
Well,
just do something better.
Problem
great idea.
The problem is that art today, as it's consumed, is done through corporate
Art
entities.
today is dead.
As it's done today is done through corporate entities. So
Yeah.
the good Catholic or Christian art that's going to get made will not be filtered through the corporate entities that can help you
Right.
reach a
Such as his
larger...
Exemplum, right?
Yes,
From Paul
exactly.
Bois.
Exemplum was a fantastic film, which you can watch. I believe it's on Tubi still and stuff, but he made it himself for like $9,000. But unfortunately, for that movie to gain the cultural relevance that it deserves, it needs to be seen in a theater.
I think there will be a massive turnaround in art and music and everything with Christianity. I mean, go back to Kanye. Look what he was doing before. He's where he's at now, which is anti-Christian in my opinion. He was doing amazing things with Christianity. That new Marilyn Manson song. I mean, look in the video. There's rebirth imagery. There's a crucifix. There's a cross. He's got a book for mass. I don't know where he's at religious-wise these days. But I think there's something there. It's a kind of a hopeful
Marilyn
image.
Manson became Christian.
I wouldn't be
That would
surprised.
be absolutely
I wouldn't be
insane.
surprised. And there's also there's death metal bands like the band Cultist. I love them. That's a Christian death metal band. They're amazing. I think there's gonna be like a real change in the near
especially with
future.
YouTube.
Thanks for watching. Listen to full episodes of Pop Culture Crisis on Spotify.
Keep up with us on social media and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the show. Bye, guys.